You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick. Thanks for joining us today. And today we're going to talk with Katherine Flett, principal attorney at Danna McKitrick. And you have all sorts of law expertise. I feel like sometimes I'm used to looking at people's law, specializations, and there's a few, but you have business law, employment law, litigation, transportation and trucking law, real estate, bankruptcy and creditors' rights, and local counsel, and you're a litigator and all this fun stuff. But before we jump into that, I had to share how we met and why it was like, okay, Katherine, all of our little coffees and lunches and things, we need to just get on camera. So Joseph Luckett, who has his book out there and is building a whole business and philosophy around networking, introduced us, said, I think you two need to meet, you'll hit it off. And clearly we did not plan the green today. So we must be on a similar wavelength. Whether that's good or not for you, I'm not sure. Everybody else can decide. But we had met, and then I think we just kicked it off personality wise. And then from there, it was just back and forth. I know somebody you should know. So Katherine's on top of all that other stuff, Katherine's a great networker. So I'm hoping today we get her tips and how she does it, along with having 2 kids and being married. She does all this stuff. So sorry for the long extra intro, but I like to share how we met and why I was like, oh, she will be so good to have on, because I'm sure she'll have some tips. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And all of that law, is the theme through it that you are a litigator, but I like somewhere in your bio you talked about you really try hard not to get your clients to have to go to court. So that's a lot of expertise and specialties. How do you do it?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky to be at a firm. I'm at Danna McKitrick, and we are a full service firm. And so, when you're in law school, you think, oh, I want to do this very specialized area of law. And when I was in law school, I wanted to do employment law. I loved employment.
Okay, why did you? So a lot of people are going to say, ooh, employment, HR. Ooh, why did you know then that you love employment law?
So I had the opportunity in law school to clerk at a few firms, and both of them were employment firms. One of them was plaintiff side, and one of them was a defense firm. I call it real life law, because it's real life situations that we all deal with. And I liked it. It came intuitively to me. So like I was saying, in law school, I thought, I'm going to be an employment lawyer. And it's kind of funny thinking back on it, because that's not really how it works. You practice the kind of law where you get a job. And it's just funny now, because I practice employment law. And at the first firm I worked at, I got to do a little bit of employment, but mostly it was an insurance defense litigation firm. And so that's kind of where I got my feet wet in litigation, and got to move into doing what I enjoy, employment law. And I think, to answer your question, the common thread of all of that is business. I represent a lot of individuals and business owners. They're people too, with respect to business.
And is that what a full service firm means? So like for those of us not in the legal field at all whatsoever, never been pulled in, thankfully, full service, describe that.
I grapple with that term, because what does full service mean? It really, it's probably the best describer, even though it's not perfect. I can tell you what we don't do more easily than I can tell you what we do. So we don't do any family law. We don't do any criminal law. We really do, our bread and butter is a business. So we help people start their business from formation to draft their contracts, negotiate contracts, real estate issues that pop up, bankruptcy issues that pop up, whether you're the company is the one filing it, or the company is the one who's owed a debt by a company who is filing it. Tax issues that pop up. Luckily, I don't have to touch those. We have some great attorneys at our office who are great tax lawyers. But yeah, really anything that pops up for a business, we can handle.
So it's probably, working with the business not necessarily transactional, because they're going to have things throughout the life of the business that they're going to want and need help with, unfortunately. But fortunately, they're going to have firms like yours and you who can kind of continue that relationship and help them along the way.
That's right. I always describe us as in-house counsel out of house. We are essentially that go-to firm for whatever the business should need throughout its life. And, like I say, I like to prevent litigation, but it does happen. And it's not always just, oh, we got sued. It's we need to file suit against this supplier, this vendor, or this employee who decided to break their non-compete or their non-solicitation. It's whatever comes up. We have the bandwidth to help them with.
And so not only do you have the expertise, but I've heard from others who are in that kind of litigation side that it takes a special, extra or personality to want to be a litigator. Yes. And you either are or you aren't. So you have all that expertise and you litigate on all that legal stuff.
Yeah. If you would have asked me in law school if I wanted to be a litigator, I would have said, absolutely not. I just want to sit at my desk and do my research, leave me alone. And you know me. I don't think that would have worked out very well. I really enjoy being in the courtroom, taking depositions, being in mediation, being out and about. I really cannot picture what my life would be like if I truly was behind a door at a desk all day long just researching. So it kind of naturally evolved. Isn't it funny how that happens? Sometimes you think you want to do A, and life leads you to what you're supposed to be doing.
So how did that happen? Because you said in law school you thought I'd never want to do that, but now you are. So looking back, was that you all along, or was it just something that was deep inside that took the right thing to pull it out?
Well, like I said, you practice the law where you get a job. I graduated law school. I went to Mizzou Law. I graduated in 2015. Not a great time for graduates, not only in the legal field, but for other industries as well. And I graduated top of my class. I thought wasn't going to have a problem finding a job, but the economy wasn't great. And I was at a non-St. Louis law school, coming from Columbia, even though I was born and raised in the St. Louis area. It was very difficult to break back into the St. Louis market when you have SLU and WashU here. So I got a job right out of law school. I say right out of law school. It was actually the second day of the bar exam. I got the first call for an interview. So graduated law school in May, take the bar exam at the end of August. And I didn't have my first interview until the end of August for the job I ended eventually having. And that firm was an insurance defense litigation firm. So like I said, that's what I did because that's the job that I was offered at the time. And I started there and I got a lot of experience. It was not the firm for me. I ended up only being there for 5 months. I actually left that firm 1 month before my wedding because I was mentally exhausted. I was physically exhausted. I remember working, it was Thanksgiving, and I was at my in-laws' house, and I worked 10 hours on Thanksgiving. And I thought, gosh, is this what I want to do the rest of my life? And I really considered, maybe being a lawyer is not for me. And I'm really glad I reconsidered that because I did end up applying for Danna McKitrick 5 months out of law school. I thought, who in the world is going to take me seriously? And applied at Danna McKitrick, got the job, and here we are 8 years later at Danna McKitrick doing some litigation, some transactional work, corporate work, getting my feet wet in a little bit of everything.
So, most people think, oh, you go to school to be a lawyer. It's got to be easy to find a job. Pedigree, having to go through what you go through has to be easy. But it's funny, I think the older I get, the more I run into lawyers and different times, it's really difficult to find that first job. And I guess sometimes in life, right, the tip might be sometimes you got to take what you can get or take that leap and that jump, try it out. But don't be afraid if and when it's not right to start looking or make that jump because like you said, you graduated, you took the bar, you're getting married, and you decide this is not for me. I need to make a change. That's pretty bold to do that with all that going on. Some may say, I'm just going to sit here and try it out for longer. So, what led up to that discovery of this is not right, the feelings, and I have to make a change.
Yeah, everyone thought I was crazy. They were like, "You're about to get married. Let's ride this one out."
You're only a couple months out of law school. Look at all those legal, school bills I'm
not one to quit a job. That's never how I've been raised to be. And I really was trying to give it my all. I was working extra hours. I was trying to do the things that I thought would make me happy. But I was going into my wedding day, and I was unhappy with my job. And my husband, God bless him, he's the rock. Like, he is just completely my rock through all of this. And I remember he just encouraged me. He was like, maybe this isn't the place for you. I remember the straw that broke the camel's back was I was supposed to go to this event, and I had my gown on the back of my office door, and my husband was going to meet me at the office. We were going to ride together, and we had it all planned out. The event didn't start till 7 p.m. I thought we'll have no problem getting there. And that day, the managing partner came in my office and said, "You're going to work on this, and I need it done by today." And I said, "Oh, I have this event going on tonight that I'm committed to go to." And she kind of looked at me and said, "You're going to get this done today." And I did. I worked late. We did not make that event that night. I remember calling my husband crying, saying, "We're not going to make it. We're really looking forward to this event, and I have to stay. I don't have any other option." And he said, "Call me when you're done. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to go to a nice dinner." He goes, "I don't care how late it is. We're going to go to a nice dinner." And we did. We went to Lombardo's for dinner. I'll never forget it. And that was the night I said, I'm going to apply for jobs tomorrow. And I did. And with his encouragement, that's how I ultimately ended up where I am now, even though it was a leap of faith, a complete leap of faith. But I'm glad it's, best decision I've made so far is to not stay somewhere where I was unhappy.
Yeah, and for you to learn it, probably what didn't seem quickly at the time, but
yes.
Looking back, sounds like it's pretty quick, I'm replaying everything that you just said. You get out of school, you can't find a job right away. You get this job, not sure if it's going to be right or not. You've got all this other stuff in your life going on. People think you're crazy, and you just realize, I'm not happy. I need to put myself first and test something else out. I mean, that's, again, pretty courageous early on, especially with potential others saying don't do it. I mean, how did you do it? I mean, was it just that out of alignment with just that unhappy that you said there's no question I got to do this?
Yes, I was unhappy. I was working all the time, long hours. The pay didn't match it. It wasn't like these jobs that you get paid really well, but you're working yourself to the bone. I wasn't getting paid well, and I was working myself to the bone. And I knew at the end of the day, I wasn't happy. And my husband, like I said, he saw it, and he was the one who really encouraged me to take that leap.
Yeah, so it sounds like, one, you kind of were able to sit back, pause, and recognize this is not making me happy. And maybe in some instances, if you're getting paid enough, you may stay, but you're not. So weighing all those, plus his support, that you kind of said, I'm worth, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as I'm sitting here thinking, she was able to sit and say, I'm worth more than this, not only financially, but I'm worth more for myself to take the risk and find the right place.
Right. I mean, I think that it really set in that life is too short. And here I am going into my wedding day. It's supposed to be the happiest time of my life. And of course I get home and I was very happy with my home life, my husband to be at the time. And I just thought, but I'm spending so much time at work. And even when I get home, I'm still working. That's not how I pictured my life. That's not what I wanted in my life.
And so 8 years on, like you said, and yes. you're here. So let's go back, because were the signs there long ago that you wanted to be an attorney, or how did it all evolve? What did little Katherine?
Yeah. So it goes back. So like I said, born and raised in St. Louis, and went to Rosati Kane High School, and I come from a business owner family. So anyone who grows up in a family business grows up in a family business. My grandfather started John's Butcher Shop way back in the day, a little butcher shop right off of St. Charles Rock Road on Walton Road. And of course, my father ended up running that shop. My uncle runs a different shop down in Festus. And I grew up in that place. I sold Girl Scout cookies. I carried bags out. I worked, as much as my dad let me / made me. It's just, I'll never forget. It was like a day after, it was the night of graduation, high school graduation, right by Brittner High School. And someone ran into the store, their car went right through the storefront. And it's like 2 a.m. And we get a call, and I hear the house phone. This is back in the day of house phones. You hear the house phone ring in the middle of the night. That's never a good sign. And sure enough, my dad got the call that a car had run through the front of the store. And so what did the whole house do? We all got up, and we were cleaning up barbecue sauce in the middle of the night. We were at the store. I mean, that's people who grew up in a family business understand that. It's all hands on deck all the time. And in fact, that's how I ended up getting my first law job. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. It was actually a customer of my dad's shop, Rick Shinners, who was an attorney at Hammond and Shinners, and he offered me a job over the summer. I'm a high school kid at the time. I worked in the mailroom, worked in reception, just got a feel for what it's like to be at a law firm. And I think you see on TV the kind of perception of what being in a law firm is like, and it was not like, it was definitely not the negative side. They took me to J Buck's for lunch every day. The attorneys treated me not like some high school kid. They treated me like one of their peers. They were really kind. And I thought, maybe this is something for me. And I remember that conversation with Rick, actually. He said, what do you want to do? What do you enjoy doing? And I said, well, I love to read. I love to write. I love to learn. I love school. Total nerd. I loved studying things and just learning about them. That was what I enjoy doing. And he said, well, what you just described is what I do on a daily basis. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of writing, and I do a lot of learning. And so, again, that was back in high school. I ended up going to Lindenwood University on a softball scholarship and decided to be a pre-law major at that point. And my senior year at Lindenwood, I decided, I was like, softball is really great, and it got me here. I loved playing, but I knew my next step. I wanted to go to law school. And it was kind of one of those happenstance, how people come into your life. Mm-hmm. It seems randomly at the time, but looking back on it, it wasn't so random. I met Crystal Gallagher, who is an attorney, at a homecoming tailgate my senior year of college. She was an alumni who came back. She was hanging out with some of the fraternity and sorority folks I was hanging out with. And I was just talking to her, and she's like, oh, well, I'm a lawyer, and we're hiring at our firm. We're looking for someone in our front desk. And I said, oh, I don't know. I'm playing softball. I don't think I can do that. I remember pushing it off at the time, thinking like, oh, I can't do that. She's like, well, take my card, think about it. And if you change your mind, let me know. And so, of course, I call my parents, and I'm like, hey, I met this lawyer at this tailgate, and she said that they're hiring. So what did I do? I went and applied for that job, and I got it. And I worked at Burns and Bamer, which was a family and criminal defense firm right down the street from Lindenwood. So I was able to work like 30 hours a week on top of finishing up throughout my senior year of school. Got to just go right down the street after class and work every day and get more experience in a law firm. I really enjoyed what I was doing there. I decided then, I was like, I don't want to do family law. I don't want to do criminal defense work. But I really enjoyed just that law firm setting. And then that's when I ended up going to Mizzou Law after that. I worked there all the way through the summer before I went to law school to make some money so that I could afford books and everything else that comes with going to law school.
Did you play softball your senior year?
I did not. So that was it was a very difficult decision. I decided at that point, I was like, I got my scholarship anyway. I confirmed that. I was not going to lose my scholarship since a lot of it was academic too. But I thought, I have to do this next step. I was ready in my life to make that transition. And I say that, but I still ended up playing fast pitch until I was like 30 years old. My husband had to tell me to, it's time to hang up the cleats, because I was playing in the summer on a women's league, and I really just enjoyed playing. So I still got the enjoyment out of playing. It just wasn't on the collegiate level, obviously. And yeah, you being a college athlete, I'm sure you understand that it was like a job.
Well, and I think it's worse. I'm older than you. I think it just progressively gets worse as time goes on, that it becomes even more than a full-time job. So I'm not even sure for my kids I would want them to do that in college. But, it sounds like you really sat back and thought, I'm playing this long-term game while I love this sport. I need to grapple with making a sacrifice today in the short run for this long-term gain.
Yeah, I think I hit the point where I'm like, it was always a goal to play college softball. And I played 3 years of college softball, and there were ups, there were downs. I had a good experience overall. I really did. I was kind of over it at that point. I thought I loved this sport, but whenever you turn something that you love to do into your job, I tell this to my business owner clients all the time, like when you turn that hobby that you love into your job, it makes it a lot less enjoyable.
Yeah. So I got to ask, what position did you play?
First base. I was a first baseman, yes.
So got to be a good catcher, got to be able to stretch.
Yeah, I was a hitter. I was there. I was a number 4 hitter.
Wow. So got some power, keep your eye on the ball, focus,
That's right.
Pay attention. And I imagine, it's the end of your senior year. Softball in college, if I remember correctly, is in the spring. And so, versus high school, it was always in the fall.
Right.
It's kind of almost getting to that point where I'm done.
Yeah, our season started in February, so it was frigid. Yes, I remember just having the hand warmers in my pant pocket and just putting my hands in my pockets every chance I could to keep my hands warm. So yeah, it was definitely different from high school playing in the fall.
So having played sports myself, and I learned so much from it. I mean, what do you think, did playing softball and playing it up to that level help you? Did it, and how has it? I'm just assuming it helped you.
Oh, yeah.
Did it help you? And if so, how? What did you take from it? And what would you, recommend either for other women out there, or how to learn those skills? And or if you're a mom, like we both are, maybe there's some things you can teach both your boys and girls by introducing them to sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I preach on this all the time. So I grew up playing on a travel league, the St. Louis Illusions. I played softball from 12 until almost 30, like I said. But on the St. Louis Illusions, I had this coach, Howard Shelton. He just really made an impact on me. He was always harping about 2 different things, and he was quoting John Wooden. I'm not going to try to quote John Wooden because I'll butcher it. But the 2 main things he would always harp on was character and how you deal with adversity. And those have really stuck with me. So he would always say, skill can get you to the top. You can have really good skill and you can get to the top. But it's character that's what keeps you there, is your character. And it's not about how you can get there in the perfect setting. It's about how you deal with adversity. You could hit that fastball right down the middle. You can hit a home run every time. That's great. What do you do with the curveball? And I've really have taken that in my own life, it's really translated well into my professional life because, yeah, it's not always a fastball down the middle. Most of the time, it's not. It's law has a lot of curveballs. And playing sports growing up, you learn how to win, but you learn how to lose more importantly. And I think that is the biggest thing that you take away from that. You learn how to strike out. You learn how to deal with difficult team members, difficult coaches. A lot of the things that some adults today that I've come across still don't have those skills. So it's difficult. And when you're growing up, you're 12, you're 13 years old, and you're learning that at that age, I think that it's just really critical and has translated well into my professional career, definitely.
So you get to Mizzou, you get through that. I mean, now you're doing what you do, excelling at this. Sometimes it's hard to hear that.
Yeah,
so maybe you need to hear that. I mean, all of us, especially I think women, we hear someone else talk about us or accolades and we're like, who is that? That can't be me. But
the impostor syndrome, yes.
Right. You are excelling. I mean, it sounds like, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who are like, wow, she's, again, assuming you're graduation year, which you talked about, her age, she's still young and she's got kids and she's so successful. And here she is, she's sitting and she shakes and kind of withdraws when I talk about that. I mean, you mentioned the imposter syndrome. Say more.
Yeah, I mean, it's real. And I was lucky enough to be on a panel at Lindenwood University for their pre-law students. And one of them asked me that question. They said, does that imposter syndrome ever go away? Do you ever not feel like you're a little kid in your mom's suit? And it's so true.
With your mom's pearls on,
right.
What you got, right?
You picture yourself like you're just this little person who, doesn't know anything, but you do. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I have a 3-year-old, Nora, and I was going to court that morning and I was in my full suit and walking out, and she said, "Mama, you look like a superhero." Oh. And it was just like the best thing to hear, because I'm like, yes, little girl, like I hope you always see a woman in a suit and think that's a superhero. That was just a cool thing. I mean, obviously she's 3 and doesn't know any better, but that was the best.
Or maybe she does know better.
Maybe she does.
Because she hasn't had the world and society telling her what she should or shouldn't think. So maybe it's that purity and innocence of a 3-year-old that sometimes we need to really probably snap us back into reality. Right.
And just wanting to be a role model for her and for other, young people around the world. You want to be that role model. You don't want to be the one that shudders when you hear your accolades. Right. But here we are.
But you see, because you have a 3-year-old, and is your son 1
He's
yet?
1, yes.
Yeah, 1. So you're running busy, being mom and working, and you're still dealing with the imposter syndrome. I mean, I guess there's a couple of questions in my mind. One, how do you do it all? You live in, probably 30 minutes or so away from your office. And so you have to deal with that, female, running all this stuff, 2 kids. So how do you get all that done? But then I also, at some point, maybe I'll write it down, is, if you think that imposter syndrome, is it more female versus male? So maybe we'll go to first. How do you get it all done, mom of 2, doing what you do, for those out there who may need some tips and tricks or be like, I can do it too?
Yeah, not alone. I don't do it alone, that's for sure. I married a rock star teammate. My husband has been an amazing, just a teammate. He is always there to support me whenever I have to stay late or, I have a work, travel, anything that comes up, he's there.
So how did that happen? I've heard some other, actually, a lot of them were attorneys who've been on the podcast, or I think about my husband, that support for women who are going to push it professionally, and whether or not they want kids, whatever it might be, that support is so important. Was it something? Did it evolve naturally? Did you have to ask for it? Like, how did that come to be?
I'd like to say that when I was talking to that cute football player at the bar back when I met him in college, that I was like, he's going to be a great husband and father. No, I mean, sure, I probably had those inklings. But yeah, it's just evolved naturally. I married someone who treated me like an equal. He has always championed me. He's always been my biggest cheerleader. And I try to do the same. I mean, he's a teacher. He was a football coach. He had a lot more long hours than I did. In fact, when we had our firstborn, he was the one that was working late on Friday nights, Friday night football, and Saturday morning meetings. And it's really a give or take. It's really, I'm here. I have to pick up the slack at certain points, and then he has to pick up the slack at other points. So
I heard something the other day. I'm doing this women in leadership program, and they said, women can really have it all, just maybe not on the same day.
Right.
So it sounds like that story there is a good one to say, put your dreams out there, think about that, find a partner, find support, even if it isn't a spouse, whatever it might be, find support.
Right.
But know that it's a given, it's a two-way highway. And that it's also, there may be given to, some days are going to be better than others, and maybe there's certain seasons, football season, where you're giving more, and then if you're in court, I'm sure, or doing a trial or litigation, that you then need more of that support. So it sounds like it evolved naturally as a partnership, but I know sometimes as women we can have a hard time asking for it. I don't know what everybody's reasons are. Maybe it's society always told us we have to do everything, be everything, and have it all together. Or by asking, we're admitting we can't do it all. Yes. I'm not sure why, but I feel like women might have a harder time asking.
I think that's so true. We're lucky to have wonderful family close by, so that when someone calls, that when daycare calls about a sick kid, my parents are there. His parents are here. His father is living in Texas, but gets to come in town pretty frequently to be around the kids. And so there is that structure around us. And then the other thing is organization. Anyone who knows me knows if they ask to get coffee or anything, my calendar is like a jigsaw puzzle. But if it's on the calendar, it's not happening. I think that's, I am very organized calendar-wise. But back to your question, yes, women, I think I struggle with that because I grew up being so independent. And it is difficult to say, I need help. I mean, there have been times where I'm like, Mom, I need help. I had COVID, it was 2020, and I had our newborn who was, I think, 8 weeks at the time. And my husband was a teacher and a wrestling coach. And so we got the OG COVID. And we had an 8-week-old at the time. And I remember having to call my mom in the middle of the night and say, Mom, I'm too sick. I need help. I need help taking care of my baby. And it's difficult to be able to swallow that pill and ask for help sometimes.
So I think for those out there, tips, tricks, we're all going through it.
You're going through it.
So, the earlier, I did hear bookers, maybe we had somebody on the podcast already, which I don't even know if her episode's released yet, it isn't, but talk about just, go to a restaurant and ask for ketchup, or make your kids too. So those who have kids, make your kids do the asking for whatever it is they want, and start small, learning how to ask for things or ask for help.
Right.
And then when you're older, when the bigger things are more important, you might be more trained in practice to do that.
Yeah, I had some really good advice given to me at one point. My car broke down. I needed to get to work, and my husband was already at work. And I remember we called a friend to help drive me. And he said, never deny someone the opportunity to love you. And he's been a great family friend since he and his wife have both multiple times, it feels like, come whenever we need it, at times that we need it. And so, yeah, never deny someone else the opportunity to love you. So that kind of helps me ask for help.
Yeah, and that's a great point, I think, because I've heard others say that, most often when you ask, and if you're genuine, people want to help. They've either been in your shoes before, or even if it's from hey, I'm the expert and I want to share what I know. But either way, you're getting help. So, don't deny, obviously go into it saying there's no expectation. You don't have to, but don't deny that person the opportunity to have those good feelings of helping somebody else out or sharing knowledge or whatever it may be. So maybe flip the script, flip the side, right? And say, it's not about me being afraid to ask. It's put it out there. Say there's no obligation, I appreciate you, I value you, I'd love to learn from you, or man, I'm desperate, I need some help.
Right.
Please come love me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and you flip it on yourself, you think, would I help them in that situation? And the answer is absolutely.
Right.
So sometimes we just have to ask.
Right. And not assume or think what that other person is going to think or say.
Right.
Whatever it might be. Well, we talked about the imposter syndrome, which I think is just so prevalent and huge. I heard it over the weekend, again, in this women leadership program. It was on many notes, like their fears, imposter syndrome. I mean, again, I'm sure there's other people that look at you and think, how could she possibly have that imposter syndrome? And is it more a female thing? How do we get over it? How do we work through it? Like, what do you do? I mean, you're going to court, baby, in front of judges. And at least I have this imagination based on TV, which I know you said isn't exactly the same. But how the heck do we work through that? Or what do you do?
I don't know. I'm still dealing with it. It's giving yourself that pep talk, and not only having my little girl tell me I look like a superhero, that helps, going into the courtroom for sure. But reminding myself, it is sometimes that reminder of, I have prepared for this, whatever it is. Like I'm a preparer. I'm not just like born smart. There are people out there that are just born with this intellect that they could take a test that they've never studied and just know it. I've never been like that. I've always tested, pretty average on standardized testing. But what I do is I outwork people. I was blessed to have parents with an incredible work ethic, and I will outwork anyone. It's unmatched. And I think that helps going into the courtroom and knowing I have prepared for this. I have read every case there is. I've memorized them. Even if I get that curveball, I have that boosts my confidence, knowing that I've done everything I can to prepare. And even when I lose or strike out at that, because you never know what a judge is going to do. And man, you really never know what a jury's going to do. So when you have those moments that you don't win, I leave knowing that I did the best I can. I did put in the work.
Right. And that's got to feel good to know you left it all out there on the field. You left it all out there in the courtroom.
Right.
It's got to be interesting being in you brought up the jury.
Yeah.
And the judge and not knowing what they're going to do. Are there things as a female that can you just go in and be you, or are there things you have to adjust or be hyper aware of?
Yeah, I think that's something I'm still working through. So I went to Trial Academy my first year. Danna McKitrick put me through the Trial Academy.
Wait. What is Trial Academy? This sounds like, I just imagine people with like Nerf guns on the side. You have to go through the gauntlet and they're just...
So this one was put on by the Missouri Council of Defense Lawyers, and it was at Mizzou Law, and it's put on by judges and experienced trial attorneys. And they tell you, we go through a fake trial, and they give you good tips, don't do this, do that. And so I remember, I'm almost 6 foot tall. And so I remember giving my closing argument, and the attorney who was my mentor at the time that was at the Trial Academy, he said, you need to take a step back from the jury because you're so tall and you may come off intimidating to the jury. And that I remember taking a hard swallow and thinking, I don't think you would have said that to a man, So there definitely, I think that there is that, you have to think about, I'm a woman. I am perceived differently because I'm a woman. I'm almost 6 foot tall. People can say I'm aggressive, which, I'll own that. I'm a little aggressive at times. But yeah, that's perceived differently because I'm a woman than if I were a man.
I think I'm guessing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, it's maybe knowing the game, having those around you who are willing to give you truthful, hard, real feedback,
right.
Whether it's right or not. There is some element of, I think, be yourself, but also know the game you're playing. I'm a nerd, so bringing this back to softball, if you're going to go get ready for a softball game, you're not going to, bring a basketball out, or you're going to come prepared with those, the clothing and all the different things that you need for that sport. So I'm guessing it's
right.
somewhat similar to, be willing to go through those practice things and have people around you who are going to, whether you want to hear it or not,
yes.
whether it's fair or not,
yes.
maybe tell you those hard things.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I'm still grappling with it. Being a mom and being in this position, sometimes the kids are sick, and sometimes I have to call off that meeting or reschedule something. And part of me is I always wanted to avoid people saying, oh, she's taking the mommy track instead of the partner track. You want to avoid that perception from your clients and your peers. But on the flip side of that, you have to be authentic. You have to be your authentic self. And I think that that's something I'm most recently coming to terms with is this is who I am. I am a mom. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. There are going to be times that they're sick that I have to reschedule something. And I think Dr. Seuss said it best. People who matter don't mind, and the people who mind don't matter. And I've really tried to obviously there are times that I have court that I can't reschedule, and that those are the times that husband and family have to step up. But I think ultimately what I'm learning, and especially in a post-COVID world, people are a lot more forgiving than we are of ourselves sometimes.
So maybe again, it goes back to what, some things that are in our head that maybe aren't real or to the degree we think it is.
Right.
But also, kind of getting back into knowing what's really important to you. And it's okay to be different for every person.
Right.
But then to try to live that truth as best you can.
Authentically. I think people can see right through you if you're not being authentic. And I think that is what has helped me in my networking life. And just building the book of business I have is because I am who I am. I grew up in a small business family. I'm not going to act like I grew up in a mansion in Ladue. I think that helps me be relatable to clients, to business clients. And I just try to be myself.
So that's a great, thanks for that segue, that intro, because I keep thinking, we have to go, I consider you like a crazy master networker. Everyone that you introduced me to is, oh, Katherine's great. I'm like, I know, she's so great. So, one, for people out there, whether or not they're currently in a position that networking is necessary, I mean, what are your thoughts and tips and things on getting started, maintaining it, being a good networker? Like, spill it.
Yeah. So networking, again, I went to law school. They teach you the laws. They don't teach you how to be a lawyer, really. And I remember, I joined Danna McKitrick, and I realized everyone at this firm, like they're actually out there marketing. This is not just an insurance defense firm where they have one client. And someone joked with me and they said, yeah, you can be the best lawyer in the world, but if you don't have clients, you're broke. Right. And that set with me. And I thought, oh, wow, yeah. And I started joining different organizations. And the first one, I started joining chambers of commerce because I was interested in, gaining a book of business clients. The first chamber I joined was not for me. It was full of other lawyers and full of other accountants. And I remember just feeling like, oh, I don't belong here. This is not my scene. This is not, the people that I'm used to being around. And so I live in St. Peter's, and I joined the St. Charles Regional Chamber of Commerce. I went to this meeting, the first happy hour. It was at a Mexican restaurant. People were eating chips and queso and drinking margaritas. And I thought, oh, I'm home. I felt
there's nothing wrong with chips, queso, and margaritas. Yeah.
It was just way more laid back. And these are business owners. These are CEOs of companies, showing up in their cowboy boots and just being themselves. It wasn't as stuffy as the other Chamber of Commerce meeting that I went to. And I felt relaxed. And there's so much to that. I felt like I could be myself. And they just have been a really warm, welcoming group. And so I joined that chamber, and I think I was in it for maybe a year, and they were like, hey, do you want to be on our board? And I remember feeling I'm just like, oh man, they must think I'm something. They're asking me to be on their board. Come to find out, a lot of boards just want attorneys on their board. But that aside, it's been a wonderful board. And now I'm actually on the executive committee. I am the vice chair of the board. Will be the chairperson of the board next year. So it's been a great organization, a really good support group. And I truly feel like I'm hanging out with my friends. I think there's a lot to be said about just finding the right group, because if it feels like work and it feels like you're on this bad date, or, sometimes it feels like a bad blind date, then it's not a good fit. So just finding something that you actually enjoy doing, you will do it, first of all, if you enjoy doing it. And I think you'll come off well to the potential, referral sources or clientele. And I think that leads me to the next point is not going into these networking events trying to sell. I remember being a young lawyer, and I was like, how in the world am I supposed to network? I don't even know, what I'm doing yet. And at that point I was doing all litigation. And so I said, I made the joke, what am I supposed to say? If you get sued, I'm your girl? What am I supposed to say? That's probably not going to come off very well. And so I started pitching what our firm did, and being a full service business firm. We serve businesses, we serve individuals, and giving that pitch of, hey, we can be your in-house counsel out of house. We can help with anything that comes up, whether it's a real estate matter, whether it's, just corporate governance, forming, making sure that your companies are formed and aligned properly. So that's what I started kind of pitching. And I don't want to say clients started like rolling in the door, but it just evolved naturally. It happened naturally. It really did. And that's kind of how I've gotten to be in my networking world, aside from meeting Joseph Luckett, who he really did just turn my networking world on its head, because I was at that point just going to chamber meetings, kind of seeing the same people again and again. I was on the diversity, equity, and inclusion group for the St. Charles Chamber, and that's where I first met Joseph. he sat next to me with his book, and I'm like, oh, here's a guy with another book, you know, like, here we go. And man, did he just change my expectations once we actually met. He introduced me to so many people. It's like he really knows how to read people. And like you and I, when we met, we just immediately hit it off. I felt like I had known you for years. And that's how I feel with, you know, people that he introduces me to. I think, how in the world did he know I needed to know that person? And
so when you say he turned it on its head, like, so you were just going to Chamber of Commerce's, what changed or what new information came your way that it did change it?
Yeah, I mean, I read his book 0 to 100, and I think that really did help me think about networking, not just for me. Like, when you network, it's not just about making that sale or getting that new client. It's about being a go-giver. And
another great book.
How can you help that person? And what goes around comes around. And I am really passionate about just connecting people. I love seeing that connection take place, and it brings that, you know, that joy, learning that you've connected these two people, and, you know, this business deal happened because of it, or that person got that job, or whatever it is. It's really eye-opening.
And I think both of those books you referenced, and I'm sure there's a lot more, and I've read a ton myself, but the very important there that I think in any relationship, even just the first time, I guess a couple things I've learned through my years is, one, don't be afraid to ask somebody. Again, and this just happened to me within the last few months. They're like, you know, I'm so busy, I'm not sure I could give you any business. I'm like, oh, it wasn't about giving business. It was about meeting a genuine, you know, another smart, hardworking, great person. But I get it. Like, you're busy. No need to. I'm not going to push anything. So I think it was, you know, just ask. And, you know, I'm learning about people. I want to build my network, my web of people, so that if somebody ever needs that, I can say, oh, I've got someone for you, or you need to meet so-and-so. So I think that don't be afraid to ask without expectation. I think we already talked about this.
Right.
And then go into that without, again, that expectation of selling, or it's really building. I'm guessing in what you do, certainly in what I do, this is not my full-time pay the bills kind of job, that it's relationship driven, and you're going to need multiple interactions to build that relationship where then they trust that they can send business your way.
Yes, absolutely. They say it takes 7 touches for someone to really remember who you are, and especially before a referral is given or anything like that. 7
Do you
touches.
have a process? Because I sit here and I think, and I've got a little bit, but nothing, because you said you're really organized, your calendar, it's a jigsaw puzzle. So I'm sure you have a process. Do you have a process where you're like, okay, I need to make sure I follow back up with that person? Again, who knows what's going to happen, but if I don't get them several times, probably nothing will happen. So do you have a process?
Yeah. So typically when I meet someone, say at an event, and we exchange cards, I will pretty immediately, when I get back to the office, I will connect with them on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever social media that person has, and send them an email and say, hey, let's get coffee, or let's get lunch, or whatever it might be. And then once I meet with that person, I immediately calendar 6 months out. Because if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen. And so I will just like give myself a little tickler, is what I call it, on my calendar to, hey, reach out to that person and see if they can get coffee or lunch or whatever it might be. My firm hosts an art fair event. The St. Louis Art Fair is in Clayton, and our office is right, you know, in downtown Clayton. So it's a really great location. And I always invite my clients, referral sources, whoever it might be, to that event. So that's in September, and that's always also a really great touch, if you will. Just an opportunity to bond with those people and see, you know, especially if it's been a long time since our last coffee, to remind myself to, you know, reach out to them and reconnect.
So host it and they will come.
Yes.
Little Field of Dreams.
Free drinks. Free. Yes.
So calendar reminders.
Yes.
Don't feel any shame with that. Yeah, I do my best to put another calendar reminder on there, and think about hosting. We had another podcast guest who said, you know, she does a lot of networking with in environments where it's mostly men, and, you know, they may or may not want to invite her to a cigar bar or whatever.
Yeah.
Nothing intentional or bad about it. So I decided I'm going to start hosting things and invite them to that. And that was a way for her to network. So maybe be the host.
Absolutely.
Or find good people around you who can help you plan to be the host. Because I'm laughing about that because you're great at setting those things up. I'm awful at. So I know we're talking about putting something together later this year. And so I will lean on your skill set of putting that together.
I always love a good event, good party. I joke that my networking started long before, it was back when I was in college doing all that partying. That's when my networking really came to be.
But it really does. I mean, if you think about it, any interaction, and two of my three are in high school. And part of what we've told them is, dive in, join in, make really good friends. And just, again, I think we talked, the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to get back. And the networking, the business building, the career building starts now, so get out there, try different things, and keep doing it in college. And I guess my tip would be just never stop. Even if you're in a role, I know my journey has certainly been different places, different roles, all within the money kind of finance industry, but different. And I think there was a time where I stopped networking, and I never should have. I wish I could go back for many reasons. Guilt, not wanting to ask somebody to give me their time because we're all busy, all these things we've talked about today. Get over it.
Yeah, it's difficult when your work life gets busy, because it used to be that I would only network. I would, and not just in-person networking either, like writing articles and blogs and being active on LinkedIn. Those are key parts of that. Those all play into those touches. But it used to be that I would only do those things whenever I had time. And I usually, had a lot of time on my hands back, before I've built the book of clients that I have now. And now it's like, I don't have time to get coffee. I don't have time to get lunch, and I have to set a specific, day of the week, Thursday mornings, whatever it might be, to say, this is going to be my networking time. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write an article about this new law that came out. I'm going to send it to, the clients in the industry that it pertains to. You have to be really intentional about it sometimes, because life gets really busy. And when you're preparing several cases for trial or whatever it might be, networking doesn't seem as important sometimes, but it is.
And it's that continuous, because if you stop for 6 months or a year, whatever, you need to keep that flow, that pipeline of meeting people going. You can't really catch up. It's hard to catch up if you don't do it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that just, when your name is raised in rooms you aren't even in, that's also when you start to build that social capital. When your name is being raised in those rooms that you're not even in, and you can work smarter instead of harder, I think that also pays off in the long run. So writing those articles and blogs and being active on LinkedIn and being active as much as you can really does pay off in the long run.
And like you said, don't be afraid to then send it to people, a link or the article itself, to say, look what I put together, or look what's out there. And who knows, they may send it to other people.
Right,
Again,
absolutely.
Getting your name out there when you're not even in the room.
Yep.
Any other tips or tricks on networking, or things you learned along the way?
Oh, gosh. As far as the it's just, in the very beginning, thinking you're out to sell a service or a product. And I see it all the time now, as a young person entering a field, and they immediately want to sell you life insurance, or they immediately want to sell you whatever it is that they have to offer. And I remember having lunch with someone like that, and I just said, hey, take a step back. Tell me about you. I want to know about you. And I think that people want to do business with people that they like and are generally, they know that they're invested in them and that they do see them as a friend. They're going to do business with them. They're going to refer that business to them. If someone immediately just tries to sell me, I don't like to be sold to right away. And a lot of people make that mistake.
And I wonder if, again, whether this is you as a networker or you on the receiving end, if women are different than men in that standpoint. We want to be courted and we want to date. We don't want that first date to be like, all right, let's,
right. Yeah.
Give me what I want and we'll be on our way. If there's a difference in both doing and receiving. So if you're a guy networking with a woman or whatever it might be, there might be, maybe in general, it's just we really need to build relationships with people. Or maybe it's also considering adjusting your style depending on who you're with.
Right. And I'll flip that too, because I think you and I have talked about this before, where women a lot of times fall into the trap of just talking about their kids, talking about their husbands. And here we are an hour in and we haven't even talked business at all. And that's not to say that business should be at the forefront of everything, because I think it is important to know about the kids and the husband and everything that that person is doing, because you are genuinely invested in that person. But it's hard for us to say, hey, how's business? You know, what are you doing? What groups are you in? What's working for you? What's not business wise?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because one, it's definitely something I struggle with. And yeah, it's right. Like when I kind of started on this journey of meeting more professional women, there were women at my kids' school and I was like, I had no idea that's what you did.
Yeah.
Why not? So why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think for me, a lot of times I don't want, the first time I meet someone, I don't want to tell them I'm a lawyer. I don't know if that's like, it comes off intimidating to people, or, you know, sometimes people, their reaction is like, oh, you're a lawyer. Maybe I need to watch what I say around you or something like that. So it's tough, because sometimes you don't want to just be like, hey, I'm a lawyer and this is what I do. And so you have, like you say, adjust it with the people you're around. But I'm in a bunch of different groups. I'm in a mom's group. I'm, involved at church. And I think a lot of people don't know what I do. So that's something that you don't want to just force it into a conversation. But if you can help someone they know, then I would love to be that person.
Right. Yeah. So I've definitely not found that great line to walk or when to know, but I think you're right. Women, and maybe again I'm just transposing myself on other women, but that it's a lot easier and safer to lean into the kid, spouse, whatever talk versus oh, I need to now, what if they think I'm selling them? What if they think, or what if they now I need to tell them I have a business and I'm doing this, and if they ever come across anybody who needs my help, I still struggle. I mean, how do you have you gotten over that? And how did you?
It's just being your genuine self. And what we do, I mean, it's not who we are, but it is a big part of who we are. And I think when you're being genuinely yourself, it comes up because you're talking about something you're working on or someone you're working with, or it comes up naturally, I think.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I'm a digester, so I'll go back and be like, oh, I should have said this. I should have asked that question probably after we're done today. I'd be like, oh, I should. Or my spouse will be like, it would have been really great if you had this question.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about just asking questions, talking about ourselves, leaning into that business, which is funny because as an attorney and as a litigation attorney, I would think you're just natural and great at all of that. But again, for those out there, it sounds like we're all working on things. But thinking about, again, I'm just like, she's got to have that skill set. With the trial academy you mentioned earlier and preparing you for that, and just kind of, hey, I was just going to do research. I was never going to do that. And here you are, again, try to stay out of court, but you have all these cases. I mean, the thought of, I'm sure you don't walk into court your first time and you're trying a case.
No.
How does that
Yeah.
How does that evolve to you start going to court to then tell us about like your first case where either it was the first time you had to ask questions or the first time you were in charge? What was that like?
Yeah, so it's way different from what you see on TV. On TV, there's a case and then the next day they're in trial. And that's not how it works. A lot of times trials don't happen until years after a case has been filed, especially in the post-COVID era. It is years before a case actually gets to trial. So
is that because everything's backed up?
Everything's backed up, yes. And it's a process. People don't realize that litigation is a big process. So, once a suit is filed, you have this whole discovery process. And that's where you exchange information, documents, you argue over things, motions are filed. It's a whole ordeal to just get to trial.
And there's pounding of fists on desks and things, right?
It's not like that. And generally, after a litigation matter, I'm usually pretty close with the adverse attorney. I think that it's not that like sure, I mean, we're both zealously advocating for our client, and we can kind of go head to head in the courtroom. But I'm thinking of one attorney in particular where afterwards she was like, "You want to go get a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it's because you gain that respect for that other person, I think, whenever you're litigating a case and you're going head to head in court. But afterwards, it's just like, "Hey, that was a really good argument." And, "Hey, where did you find this?"
You talked about character, because I would imagine you're probably seeing these people, I'm sure not every month, but you're going to probably see them again, come upon them again, some way, somehow. So you don't really want to burn a ton of bridges around town or put that target on your back by, while maybe dealing with adversity, making sure your character is good.
That's huge. And in law school, there's a class called lawyering. And I remember when I saw it pop up on my schedule, I'm like, lawyering, what does that mean? And Dean Bailey, who I mentioned earlier, he was my professor. And he said, my number one advice in this entire class, what you're going to learn is don't be a jerk. And it really does pay off to not be a jerk. I can tell you, just the other day I had a case where I entered on behalf of a business client of mine, and I knew the adverse attorney because I'd worked with him on something before. I'd worked against him. We had a case against each other before, and I called him and said, "Hey, I'm going to be entering for XYZ client." And he said, "Okay, well, I was gonna do X, Y, and Z, but I'll hold off on that because, we had a good working relationship." And that's not to say we're friendly buddy necessarily all the time, but we have that mutual respect for each other.
Well, don't be a jerk, I think, is a good, and I'm writing it down, is a good mantra for anyone, anywhere, anytime. You never, whether you're if you're in St. Louis, then it's a small, big town. Yes. But anywhere, you never know. It all comes around. So don't be a jerk.
Yes, definitely. Especially when you're in the courtroom. I mean, you never know when you're going to need something, or, say I get a case that is not in my, practice area. So I've referred cases to other attorneys I've worked against before. So it definitely is what comes around goes around.
Be tough, but don't be a jerk.
Yes, definitely.
Be solid and confident, but don't be a jerk.
Yes. And to answer your original question about that first time walking into court, I mean, it is intimidating, but I was lucky to be at a firm like Danna McKitrick that they threw me in the water a little bit, and it was the best way to learn.
How did they throw you in? I mean, you'd been with them how long, and you're getting thrown in the water?
So when I first started, I did have the opportunity to attend hearings with a couple of the attorneys, and I'd say like maybe once or twice I'd attend something. And then they were like, "Hey, you want to handle this hearing?" And of course, inside me is like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that by myself yet." But then you want to do it. And I say, "Yeah, absolutely, I'm going to do it." And so part of it, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, because I hate that. It's not about faking it until you make it. But part of it is just believing you can do it and having the confidence to set out and do it. And then afterwards, it feels great once you have done it and you feel like you could do it 10 more times. But yeah, being in a courtroom can be a very intimidating atmosphere, especially as a woman when it is pretty male dominated. But you just do it.
When you said earlier, you, and that you're going to put the work and the prep in no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's doing that work, but having the trust and the confidence, plus the awareness of, I may have been afraid. I may have done things in the past that I was afraid to do, but I'm still alive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago if I wanted to be on a podcast, I would say, "Oh gosh, I don't want to hear my voice or see me," or, but you do it, and it feels really good after it's done. So.
And, what's the best that can happen? It's a great conversation, and you share something with somebody that they know. Yeah, just, I don't know if it's do it scared, get a little ridiculous in your life, go crazy, folks, for those in St. Louis. But I think it does take a little bit of that, be crazy enough to step outside the lines that you would maybe typically stay inside. But you mentioned that the courtroom is more heavily male-dominated arena.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting better. Word on the street, I think it's about 50-50 in law schools now. That said, litigation is heavily male still. But I don't let that intimidate me. And I think some men, I get this a lot, where some men will try to like pound their chest at me because I am this tall woman, and immediately they're like coming at me strong. And I'm just like, "Hey, let's talk about this. Let's be rational about it." Or so I do experience that from time to time.
So it sounds like it doesn't shake you. You kind of bring it down a notch or calm it down a little bit, and but stand in your confidence and your power to say that, I know who Katherine is. I know how she's going to do this, and I'm going to meet you in my way, and I'm not going to adjust or shift myself for the situation.
Right. Adding gasoline to the fire never helps. So yes, bringing it down is definitely helpful.
And sticking true to your person, your soul. I mean, have there been times where you've, as an attorney, gotten advice that, you've not taken that has worked well for you?
I remember my first appellate argument. It was just a couple of years ago, and I was arguing to the Court of Appeals. I don't know if you know that there's 3 judges. It's a panel of judges. You have to be licensed to do this in appellate court. Some lawyers make their living on only doing appellate work, and this was my first appellate argument, and it was actually right after I got back from maternity leave from having my second born. I was terrified. And I was talking to my friend who had had a couple of these before, and she said, tell the panel of judges it's your first time. Just swallow it and tell them it's your first oral argument in front of an appellate panel. And I said, oh gosh, I don't want to do that. This opposing attorney, he's, part of the good old boys. He's, I don't want him to think any less of me because this is my first time arguing. And I had it made up in my mind. There was no way I was going to admit that was my first time in front of this adverse counsel. And I got up there at the podium, and the first thing I said was, thank you for, having me here. This is the first opportunity I've had to argue an appellate argument. And I said that, and I just remember feeling so relieved after that. And the advice I got from my friend was that they'll be a little easier on you if they know it's your first time. And so I gave my argument, and afterwards, the other attorney, he's real cocky and came up over after me. He's like, oh, I didn't know this was your first time. And I said, he's like, this is I've done, hundreds of these and blah, blah, blah throughout my career. And I said, good, I'll feel really good when I beat you then. And I won the case. I did end up winning. And it was the bet when the opinion came through. I remember thinking like, oh, yes. And the adverse attorney emailed me and said, all right, let's talk about settlement. Because before that, he was just so confident he was going to win this. Wow. And we ended up settling for just very, very minimal amount from what he was claiming. So it ended up being a great experience, even though I was terrified being in front of that panel of judges where they're allowed to ask you any questions they want. And it's back like law school where they'll ask you, well, this case said this and this case said that. How do you reconcile that? Or it's nothing you can prepare for, really. I mean, it's on the spot type of questioning.
Well, man, I remember what it was like, I think, coming back from maternity leave. Your body, those hormones are going, and I'm not going to say it. And by the way, this is my first time doing it.
I completely had my mind made up. I was not going to do it, and just something urged me that second. I'm really glad I did. Not that I think that they were easier on me, but it was fun to have that interaction afterwards with the adverse attorney who had to come up and tell me how many cases he's had before a court of appeals.
But I think it goes back to just being open, honest, and true. And, putting it out there. And as you said, it was this relief after you said that, like, kind of glad I got that out.
Yeah, definitely. And just going to trial, I think that's a whole nother thing. When I first started practicing, I had prepared all these cases for trial, went through the whole discovery process, and then they would settle. These cases would settle. It's, again, not like you see on TV where all these cases go to trial. 99% of cases do not go to trial. They settle way before. And so in the beginning, I was terrified of actually going to trial until I had my first trial. And it's a marathon. And the first trial I had, I second chaired. And it was in Kansas City, so we were staying in a hotel. So it was truly a marathon. We were up all night preparing for the next day. And we did it. And afterwards, I was like, oh, that's not so scary. Like, I could do that again. And I think it changed the way I practiced, because after that, I was like, I'm ready to try this case if I have to. And I started working cases that I knew probably would never go to trial in a way that as if this was going to go to trial. And I wasn't afraid of it. And I think that that's also helped me as I have shifted into doing a lot more corporate work and transactional work. Because I have seen how some of these things go awry, some of these contracts that have this provision or that provision in it. I have that experience as a litigator to see what can be said on the other side, the arguments that can be made, and what a mess that can be made of a contract.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, my understanding was you're almost either a litigator or you're not. And that it sounds like you've been able to find a marriage. You've been able to walk both sides, which in the end then really helps you probably better on the contract building, the getting things done for the business to say, and by the way, I know on the other side what might, if something were to go awry, and I hope it doesn't, and that's what we're going to plan for, but if it does, then I know how the other side, the holes they might poke.
Yes.
Let's take care of those now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an old-fashioned practice or way of thinking of being either a litigator or a transactional attorney. And I think in law school, that line was drawn back then, even though I don't think I ever truly understood what it meant to be a transactional attorney versus a litigator. But yeah, I'm lucky to be at, again, the firm that I am where they allow that, because many big firms, mid-sized firms, they silo you. It is, you will do this or you will do that. And that's all you do, your whole practice. I have plenty of friends that have done that. And I'm lucky to be at a place that allows me to kind of expand those horizons and do what I want to do. Like I said, I'm a huge nerd. I love to learn. I love to get into new things and learn it and truly know it. And I'm lucky to have the experienced team I have at Danna McKitrick. They've been around for 50 years now. So they're very experienced in what they do. And I'm able to go down the hall and say, hey, have you ever had a case like this? And how did you handle it? And what did you do? And get that real life feedback, real life experience.
And it's interesting to know that in law that there are so many different types of skill sets and or firms, to where if you really love one area, then find that firm where you can just do that in and out and be that expert. If you're one that, it's like, I'm going to get bored with doing the same thing over and over, or I just want to constantly learn. Not that you can't constantly learn in those, but I guess it goes back to like kind of thinking through what is it that drives you, that you're passionate about, and being willing to, even if it's 5 months in, just out of college, your wedding coming, be willing to say, this is not going to serve my inner passion, my inner drive, if finding that right fit.
Yeah, I think my underlying passion is helping people. And I had friends from law school joke with me about working on the company side. And they're like, oh, you're working for the man. And I said, well, if the man is someone like my dad who owns a small business, then yes, I'm working for the man. Yes, I want to help people like my family who have owned businesses. And whether that's someone who is, getting sued over a real estate matter, or someone that is, needs help navigating a contract issue or employment issue, whatever it might be, I like being that resource to help people. That's what I'm truly passionate about, as cheesy as it sounds.
No, and it's honestly perfect, because, at the end of these things, we always try to say, okay, who would you love to work with, or who are the people that should come to you? And that was a really great, without you knowing it, a really great summary. It's like, no, I want to get in there and help those business owners, help those families who had a car drive through the front of their building and they're cleaning up barbecue sauce, and help them get in there and take that, I imagine, that legal weight off of their shoulders to say, you're really doing what you love and what you're great at. Let me help protect it and build it in a way that some mishap down the road won't take it down.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't speak to that enough. I mean, small businesses are not just a name on the door. It's all about the family that the mouths that name on the door feeds. And I experienced that. And I've experienced it on both sides. I know attorneys out there that just see dollar signs, on the side of a big company or a small company. And that's just not the way that I've approached things. I've seen the other side of it. I've been the family that small business has supported. And I do take a team approach to things. I like feeling like I'm a member of that team, of that company, to help it not just survive, but thrive and avoid those fires.
And it sounds like both from your family business, being the lawyer, that you're deeply ingrained, tied into preparing, setting things up, and or the outcome. So have there been some amazing wins or tough losses along the way that, you can either share or talk about or say, what did you learn from it? Or
yeah, I have to think about that. I always love being able to advise on the forefront of things instead of after a fire. I think a lot of people are afraid to hire attorneys because they think, oh, they're expensive. I don't, want to pay all of that. But it truly is an investment. And when I'm able to, when the client calls me and says, hey, I'm thinking about revising my handbook, my employment handbook, or my policies. And usually it is based on some kind of experience that they had in the employment law world, and being able to help them with those policies so that when an issue pops up, we say, oh, here's our policy on that, and this is how we'll handle it, and we navigate it that way. Versus something's already on fire. Hey, I fired this person because of XYZ, and oh, by the way, they're a member of a minority group. They have a disability. They have a pending work comp claim, or whatever it might be. I'm not kidding. Like, this happens. And they think, well, I had a valid reason to fire them because of XYZ. And I'm like, yeah, but... So there are a lot of times like that I feel when they come to me early, I'm so thankful that I was able to help them on the forefront instead of have to put the fire out at the end, because that gets a lot more costly and just draining emotionally for the business owner usually.
So it sounds like some of the wins are when they come to you early enough.
Yes.
And maybe some of the heartaches are when they don't. But overall, would you consider that appellate court case, the one you talked about, like your biggest win? Or is there something else that stands out to you? Gosh,
I have a lot of wins. I think that I have to sit back and think about, whether it's, giving a presentation that I was so nervous about giving, or a win in the courtroom. Yes. I mean, that's absolutely one of my big highlights, one of the stories I like to tell, and it was pretty recent in my career. It wasn't something that happened right out of the gate. So yeah, I think that was probably one of my big wins.
A loss that sticks with you, or tough lesson learned? Not that you want to just come out and talk about that.
I think so. Every deposition, there's always that, oh, I should have asked that question, or oh, if I would have asked that question and got that testimony on the record, I could have, filed a motion for summary judgment or done X, Y, and Z. And there's always that Monday morning quarterback moment. Not always, but you could always have done something a little bit better. And my partner Josh Schmidt he gives me the best advice. He's like, the good thing about law is that things can always be fixed. Things can always be done later. If you miss that question in deposition, we can always ask it in an interrogatory or in written discovery. There's always something that you can do. So don't stress out about it too much. And I think that he really helps. He is like the calmest attorney I've ever met in my life. And I really tried to be more like that, because nothing's ever the end of the world.
So it's a good probably tip for those perfectionists out there who, most always there's a way to come back around, fix it, whatever that might be. So don't stress too hard. Try to be that calmest attorney.
Right.
And so it sounds like, again, you've got all of these employment law, business law, real estate, bankruptcy, counsel in general, transportation and trucking, whether it's, any of those, whether it's small business or not, those are the people who you work with and you help, and those were the ones that come to you.
Yeah.
Anybody else beyond that? If you're a small business, if you're get to her before you do something wrong or...
Right. Yeah. We do assist individuals as well. Anyone that gets sued over just about anything, we can service typically. So yes.
And then they can easily find you just by Googling you. That's pretty easy. But LinkedIn, I know
Yes.
you write articles, you're out there a lot. And then the Danna McKitrick website, you're out there.
Yes.
What other ways can they find you if it's not at the Professional Women's Alliance, PWA?
Yes.
I know you're there. At the Chambers of Commerce.
Yes, I'm in the St. Charles Regional Chamber as well as the O'Fallon Chamber. Like I said, I live out in St. Peter's, so I call it Danna McKitrick West, my house out there.
Yeah. And with two little kids, mine are a little bit older, but with two little kids, I'm sure the surprises that come your way with raising two kids that you might have to pivot and stay out there and be out there.
Yes.
But whether it's through the website, the PWA, the Chamber of Commerce, I know also LinkedIn, you mentioned Rosati Kane.
Yes.
You know, over the last year or two, that community has certainly risen up and come together.
Yes.
So I'm sure you're a big participant.
Absolutely. Rosati Kane Academy is what it is now known as, and it's operating separately from the Archdiocese. And I just saw that they welcomed a new class. So it's really, I'm glad to hear that they're able to stay open, and I do everything I can to get the word out there about Rosati Kane, because I know what a great place it was for me.
Yeah, well, all these accolades and things you're doing and accomplishing. And as Nora, I had starred this because I just think this is the sweetest. And I've had a child of mine really kind of grab me sometime and try to, remind me of, it's really still hard to say, but remind me of how much I have accomplished and how awesome. And she's like, do you know that you're awesome? That she told you that you're a superhero. And so certainly through today and all the people that you are unapologetically you when you meet them, I think they would say the same thing, that you are a superhero and, showing it and doing it in your natural skill set. And, so if you're in need or want to prevent the need for something down the road, definitely reach out to Katherine and her firm to get that kind of legal help that, again, I probably didn't do it justice. Go to the website. Look at all that she does. I can't say it all. And, if you want to work with somebody who's truly her and authentically true and real, then find her. And then if you need a network, she can tell you how to do it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. A couple years ago, you wouldn't have done it, but you trusted me and you said, let's just do this. We can just we're having a cup of coffee.
That's right.
And I hope for everybody out there, again, that you've taken something away. I know I have. It at the end, really focus on how your character, how you handle adversity, and don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
Thanks, Katherine. Thanks for joining us. And I'll expect, if not 6 months from now, that I'll be getting, you'll have a calendar reminder soon so we can get back together.
Most definitely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.